chiropractor when I was 12.
Did you really? At 12 years old?
Oh, it must have been forced. I don't know too many people voluntarily go to a chiropractor at 12.
Well, I mean, it was, I grew up in the farm equipment business. And back then you would put together heavy farm equipment and you weren't taught how to lift properly. You're all bent
Yeah.
over from the waist down and stuff. And you learn how to lift with your legs. That car accidents and other things through the years, athletic use.
Excuse me.
So, yeah, I still see one today.
Really?
Yeah.
You must go to,
60 years.
I'm about to say, if it's that case, then, you know, that's an old school chiropractor, been practicing for
Well, that's it. I've
years.
seen a number of them through the years.
Yeah.
And, you know, my first chiropractor adjustment really hasn't changed much from the manipulation from then to today. Now they use this little,
The little tools, yeah. Activate is what we call it.
yeah, anyway, so, yes, it will straighten you out, it will relieve pain.
Right.
But, you know, there's some pain that you just, you know, I have neuropathy and vertigo, you know, that affects my balance and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And not much you do for that. Chiropractic is wonderful. Wonderful.
I tell people this every day, clearly.
You provide a wonderful service for people.
And a lot of times it's really just about how their bodies are functioning too, right? Ultimately, our job and what we do here specifically is all corrective care based. You know, it's corrective care based, right? And so ultimately, the goal is to make sure that we're making structural changes to the spine. Because when you think about chiropractic, you also want to think too about how the nervous system is functioning. And our nervous system, essentially, it controls everything. You know, it controls our daily functions through our bodies, inside and out. So how we move, how we talk, how we think, right? All these things are important. And in many cases, people, when they're going to chiropractors, they are really trying to make sure that we want to get out of pain, but we want to also function at an optimal level as well, right? And so the older we get, our bodies, obviously we know, right? Our bodies start to wear and tear over time, right? I tell people all the time, and it's a joke that I make sometimes. I say, what's the two most common areas people get replaced in their bodies? The knees and the hips, right? You know, because over time, what happens to those joints? They start to wear away, right? And then we go bone on bone. But when you really think about the spine, right, it also has cartilage, right, that can start to wear away and go bone on bone. But yeah, you can replace the hip and the knee. You can't necessarily replace your spine, right? And not yet, at least, you know, because who knows where technology is going 10, 15, 20 years from now, right? But it's really important because that's where your nervous system flows through, right? And because your nervous system flows through your spine up to and from your brain, right? There's a lot of functions that's happening, right? If I was to ask y'all the question, what's the most important organ in the body? Me and Randolph, we had a conversation about this years ago. It was like a debate. What would your answer be? The most important organ in your body? Heart, skin, brain, right? If I had a candy, I'd throw it to him, right? Right? Your brain is actually the most important organ in your body. And although the heart is like a close second, right? Because yes, the heart pumps blood throughout our bodies, but in reality, what tells the heart to pump? Brain, right? And so this right here is so important because this is where all of that information is being processed and sent back and forth throughout the entire body, right? So it's so important to take care of the brain as well, right? Through our nervous system. You know, I get people who come in, they're experiencing migraines or headaches. You know, I get patients that come in, they had a stroke years ago, or they've been dealing with Parkinson's, My background is in functional neurology, right? So I used to work with TBI cases. I used to work at Brooks Rehab in the Neuro Recovery Center. So I did a lot of work with, traumatic brain injuries and, stroke wellness or stroke survivors and Parkinson's wellness, right? We understand too, Parkinson's is a degenerative disease, right? So you can't necessarily stop it. You have to slow it down, right? Same thing when we talk about Alzheimer's or dementia, people who are dealing with these things as they get older and they start to lose their memories, And so a lot of times when I have patients who come in, especially my patients who are above 65, right? And I always try to make sure that I tie in and I let them know like, hey, this is important for you. Because if you want your brain, if you want your nervous system to continue to function properly, right, you want to make sure that you're getting adjusted regularly. Not only that, but you also want to take proper supplements too. One such supplement like magnesium. Magnesium is probably one of the most commonly deficient vitamins in the human body. But, right, if we're not getting it in our foods, we have to do what? Supplement with it, right? And then there's so many supplements out on the market these days because you can pretty much go in any store and pick up, right? Exactly, right. But it's not necessarily the supplement itself. It's about the quality of that supplement as well, because there's different types of magnesiums out there, right? You have magnesium oxide, you have citrate, you have chelated magnesium, right? But if your body doesn't absorb it, then what's the use? It's a waste. And so we joke about it. I call it expensive urine, really. Right? you're buying supplement off the shelf, you take it, but then you're just peeing it right out, right? Because your body doesn't absorb it like it should. And that's usually, especially with magnesium, right? It's usually with your oxalated magnesium or your citrate. Chelated magnesium is the type that you want to be taking because your body will absorb it. It absorbs upwards of 90%. Right, into your body, which means not only is it effective on your joints, but it's effective with your muscles, right? It helps relieve fatigue, but it also helps on brain function too.
What kind of magnesium?
Chelated, CHELATE, MagFusion. Right, so one of our biggest ones, especially that we do here, is called MagFusion, which is a chelated magnesium. Right, that most of our patients, when they're coming through, these are the types of supplements that they get because they understand that, hey, doc, I've been experiencing migraines or headaches. I've been experiencing, I feel like I can't think straight. I've been getting brain fog, or doc, I feel like sometimes, my memory is short. Like I get short-term memory loss sometimes, right? So I'm always telling them, say, hey, you need to grab a bottle of magnesium. You need to be taking these things, right? And those aren't the only things, of course, but these are what we call your anchors, right? Omega-3s and things of that nature, all right? So if you understand the things that your body needs, then it makes a lot more sense as to what you should be doing to take care of it, correct? Right? It's the same thing with why y'all are here today, you're talking about, estate planning, or you're talking about making sure that we put things in order for the future, right? It's the same way with taking care of your body. Because when you talk about estate planning, well, that's for the future. What about right now while I'm here, right? I need to be taking care of myself while I'm here so that I can live an extended, period of life, right? Until that time comes. But anyway, I'm Dr. Sanders.
I have heard people should go to chiropractor for sinus problems.
Yes.
And to me, that would be more of a medical thing, but people have said, for sinus conditions, they can do that without it.
Absolutely. The drugs and the surgery and stuff.
Medicine so much less. I thought that was interesting.
So here's the interesting part about it, right? Your nerves, brain, remember, brain, spinal cord, right? What branches from spinal cord? Nerves, right? Nerves branch out and they innervate all areas of our bodies, okay? So guess what? Your sinuses are being controlled by the nervous system, right? So if your sinuses are being controlled by the nervous system, okay, and you have what we call a subluxation or misalignment somewhere in the spine, then that means that communication that's going to our sinuses is being interrupted, meaning sinuses don't work properly. All right. Now, can there be outside interferences or outside issues, right? Pollen, things like that, allergies, absolutely, right? But why not take care of the source first and then worry about everything else? Okay. It's, a lot of times I say we're superficial creatures. We address things from a superficial standpoint. We never really get to the root cause of it at all, right? So then we continue to have symptom after symptom after symptom after symptom. All right, I tell you, that's like you're putting a Band-Aid on, but you're not necessarily fixing the issue itself, right? So, but anyway, any other questions I may have? Yeah. Absolutely. Well, but see, it all ties in though, right? Because especially when you're talking about estate planning, right? What are we trying to plan for? Right? We're trying to avoid probate, right? But you're also trying to make sure that, hey, when I'm not here, right, I want to be able to take care of people that I love, right or wrong. Right? Right. You know, they're taken care of, but we also want to make sure that we're taking care of those things. But what's finances? How can you take care of finances if you haven't taken care of yourself? Right? Am I right or wrong? You know, and I say that because I've dealt with that. I've dealt with estate planning. I've dealt with probate, right? As young as I look, right? Father passed away. And guess what? I had to go through probate, right? Because he didn't have this information, right? Neither did he have the information about his wellness either. You know, as much as sometimes we think, hey, things don't necessarily connect. They actually do, okay? In many cases, if we sort of open our minds up a little bit, we will start to see, hey, that does make sense, right? Hey, how I feel today, if I'm thinking properly, then maybe I can start making the proper decisions for future events that may come about, right? You know, so that's kind of why we're kind of talking about this just a little bit, all right? But I don't want to take up too much of your time. Any other questions? Yeah. Sweet.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Percell. And like he said, I don't know if anybody familiar with a guy by the name of Albert Einstein, right? Never heard of him? Yeah, it's a very unknown scientist, right? But one of the things that I like about Albert Einstein is all of the theories that he had. As technology catches up to his mind, they're proving his theories, right? And one of the theories that he had, believe it or not, is that the past, the present, and the future are all happening at the same time. And still to this day, I'm like, how is that even possible? With the linear way that we think, how is it possible that the past, the present, and the future are all happening at the same time? Now, maybe technology will catch up to proving that, but at the very least, philosophically speaking, it's true. Because if you think about it, everything that you're doing today is based off of how you were raised. And then everything that's going to happen in the future is based off what you're doing today. So if you think about it that way, the past, the present, and the future are all happening simultaneously. One of the reasons why a lot of people put off estate planning, because I don't know y'all personally, but some of you, this probably isn't your first event. Some of you probably go to an event maybe every 3 months, every 6 months, every year. There's a reason why you're putting it off. I don't know why, but it might be the brain fog. And it might be the brain fog caused by a misalignment in the spine. So that's why, I always look whenever I'm partnering with people, how can what you do connect with what I do? So just so you know, my name is Randolph Love. I am a wealth strategist. I help people take care of the foundation and then build up. Because like I said, all truths are parallel. Before you start talking about putting a chandelier in your foyer, you got to make sure your foundation and your footing is well. All right. So here we go. How's this not connected? It was connected the whole time until we started doing this. All right, there we go. All right, so just so you know, and like I said, I truly believe all truths are parallel. So before you take information from me, I want you to know the source. My name is Randolph Love. I'm registered with the state, the Florida Department of Financial Services. I am a registered instructor, and I also just got approved as a course provider. So I'm able to do pre-licensing and continuing education for the Florida Department of Financial Services. I do provide training and consulting for corporate, federal, state, and local governing agencies regarding financial literacy, insurance pre-licensing, and continuing education. I've taught thousands of agents, thousands of insurance adjusters. If either one of you have insurance of any kind, or you've been through an insurance claim, there is a big chance that I'm the one that instructed them. Because once again, I'm just a person. I like to read. I like to take complex things and simplify it. And hopefully I can do that for y'all today. Also, I assist individuals and business owners with effective tax minimizing wealth strategies. I don't know if any of you currently own a business or have owned a business, but most businesses, 80% don't never sell. Most children don't want nothing to do with their business. So I help people create a liquidity event when it comes to that. So just so you know, I've been doing this for a while. I have some experience. I actually was an agent with State Farm for 7.5 years. I retired. I took a recreation. I recreated, and then I recreated. Anybody ever notice that recreation and recreation are spelled the exact same way? And what happens is once you start relaxing, which I'm sure some of you've probably experienced, you start thinking of new things. Or what should I do next? They say your wealth, based off of your social, economic level, determines how far you think into the future. A bum on the street is only thinking to the next day, right? Once you start going up in social economic, you start thinking for the next week, thinking for the next month. Now, y'all are at the stage where you're thinking years into the future, and some of you are thinking past your actual lifetime. So I say that to say this. People that's doing bad don't typically come to estate planning events. Usually you've made some good decisions. You probably made some bad decisions, but you understand that this is important. All right? So here's the first thing that I want to teach you, because my main thing is education. If I end up doing business with either one of you, great. But I want to educate you first. The first thing that you need to consider when you're dealing with somebody who does your estate planning, you want to make sure they have a team. Why is that important? Just like something may or may not happen to y'all, it may or may not happen to me. What if I disappear? What if my phone goes out? What if I leave the country? What if I get hit by a bus? You want to make sure whoever you're working with have a team, all right? So that's the first thing that I want to make sure that y'all understand when it comes to this education. Make sure whoever you're working with have a team. I've strategically aligned myself with people that are smarter than me. I prefer to be not the smartest person in the room. I don't get no pleasure from that. I like to listen and learn and then simplify it, then convey it, okay? So I don't know if any of you are religious or anything, but one of the reasons why religious doctrines are so popular is because they use stories. They use parables in order to get a point across. So I want to introduce y'all to Jed, all right? Farmer Jed, he made some great decisions in his life, right? He had a very successful business. He sold the successful business, and this is Farmer Jed's estate. Not only does he have a beautiful mansion, he has a nice little pool house, and he has vegetation that looks like a maze. Once you start growing your yard plants to look like a maze, you know you got too much time on your hand, right? And Farmer Jed, he had too much time on his hand. And guess what? He had all this money, but only one heir, Ellie Mae, right? Ellie Mae, he knows that Ellie Mae can handle this. You know, she was a daddy's girl. She grew up right next to his knee, right? But he wants to make sure that she has somebody with her to help support her in managing this estate that he will ultimately pass down to her. So what Farmer Jed did was he sent out an invitation to all of the eligible bachelors in the town, right? And they came out and they ate his food. They drunk his drink, right? They enjoyed themselves. They got very full and a lot of good drink in them. And then finally, Farmer Jed, he told all the men to come to the back of the house. And he says, man, this is why I brought y'all here. All of you know that I have this nice estate. All of you know that I have my daughter, Ellie Mae. So I have a competition for y'all. If there's a man here today that can jump in on this end of the pool and get out to the other side of the pool, I have one of three things that I'm going to give you. If you can jump in from the beginning of this pool, swim, and get out on the other side, I have one of three things for you. One of them is I'm going to give you $10 million. If you jump in this pool and swim from one side to this pool, I'm going to give you $10 million. The other one, if you don't want the $10 million, I'm going to give you my house that I just showed, that we're eating out. You either get 10 million or you can get my estate. And the third one is you get my daughter's hand in marriage. And keep in mind, if you marry Ellie Mae, you get all of it, right? And so he say, now, it's very important that you understand the reason why this competition is so steep is because there's a crocodile in this pool, right? There are snakes in this pool. There are piranha in this pool. If you can jump in this pool, even with the crocodiles, even with the snakes, even the piranha, and you make it to the other side, I'm going to give you, and before he can get it out of his mouth, he heard a splash, right? He heard a big splash, and within 8 seconds, here comes John out the other side of the pool, right? And then Farmer Jed said, oh, man, that's great, man, John, man, I can't believe you did that. You did that in record time. He said, you must want $10 million. He said, no, I don't want $10 million. He said, okay, well, you must want this estate, man. This is a nice estate. You saw my vegetation maze? Did you see my bushy maze? He said, I don't want your estate. He said, well, congratulations. Welcome to the family, son. You must want to marry Ellie Mae. He said, sir, all due respect, this is a small town. Nobody here wants to marry Ellie Mae, right? He said, well, if you don't want the money, if you don't want my estate, if you don't want to marry Ellie Mae, what do you want? He says, I want to know the name of the man who pushed me in that pool. and it's funny, right? Like, you know, whenever I tell this story, everybody laughs, right? But like I said, all truths are parallel. What happens when somebody pushes you in the pool, philosophically speaking? What happens when you get that call in the middle of the night? Your son, your daughter was just in an accident. Now they're unresponsive. Or your spouse was just in an accident or something happened. Now they lost capacity. This person that you've seen, that y'all have grown together, this person that was so competent and capable, now all of a sudden they can't even remember how to get back home. What are you going to do when that happens? Well, I'm going to tell you what you're going to do. You're going to be prepared in advance. Right? You want to have all of your directors together. We're going to talk about medical power of attorneys, financial power of attorneys. If you don't have that in place, I'm going to show you, give you some insight on how that should be structured. We're going to be talking about wills. We're going to be talking about trusts. I recommend a revocable living trust. That way you're able to keep your flexibility, right? And it helps you avoid probate, and it keeps your stuff private. All right. So let's get into it. All right. So here's what we're going to be going over. So estate planning. What's better, a will or a trust? A trust? You heard a trust was better. A trust? Anybody say will? Will. When you heard that the trust was better, did they give you any details on why it was better? Okay. Well, since we're at 100% chiropractor, we're going to get you 100% sure, okay? So think about it. When all you have is just a will, you just guaranteed probate. That's a new thought, right? The way we were brought up, we would think, all right, make sure you get your will. And when you get your will, you can help avoid all this headache. Nah, when all you have is just a will in place, you just give the judge a roadmap on what you recommend they follow. But the judge don't have to follow it. Because in order to get this will enforced, you have to go through court, right? Now, the way the state of Florida has it worked out is anything $40,000 and below is capped at approximately $1,500 to go through probate. That's what it's capped at. But do you understand that that cap isn't final? all it takes is one person to contest your will. If one person contests your will, that cap is completely eliminated. And so let me give y'all a story, another story. Has anybody ever lived in a cul-de-sac? Do y'all know what a cul-de-sac is? So if you've ever lived in a cul-de-sac, are you familiar with somebody who lived in a cul-de-sac? Every cul-de-sac that I've ever lived in, and I think my mama had a thing for cul-de-sacs because we lived in about 4 or 5 cul-de-sacs, right? And you know, it's kind of cool because you don't really have to look across the street at nobody. You got that big open area. But one thing that I learned about cul-de-sacs is there is always that one neighborhood cat that gets comfortable laying in the middle of the cul-de-sac. Y'all ever seen that cat? Right? And this cat gets so comfortable, and I've seen it at multiple different neighborhoods. And whenever I see that, I already know that it's not going to be long. What do I mean by that? Because 99 out of 100 people, when they see that cat laying in the middle of the road, what are they going to do? They're going to roll around it. And then you got that one psychopath. This cat done got so comfortable being able to lay in the street and everybody roll around it. You got that one psychopath that's going to go out their way to run over this cat, right? What happens when you have a will is they have to put your estate in the newspaper for at least 3 weeks. Did y'all know that? So what happens when a psychopath who all they do is read probate and estate newspapers? And even though they don't know you for nothing, they know that when they contest your will, that they're not going to be able to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that they have a right to anything in your state. But guess what they just did by contesting your will? They just removed that cap. Now this court and this attorney can essentially charge you anything that they want in order for you to go through probate, which had a cap on it. So one of the reasons why, and there's several reasons, but one of the reasons why people say a trust is better than a will is because a will guarantees probate. And when you have a trust and it's structured and funded correctly, not only do you avoid probate, but you also do not have to put your estate in the newspaper for 3 weeks. Everything remains private, okay? Financial strategies, growth and protection. So it's not about how much you make, it's about how much you keep. I'm going to mention some things on how you can protect what you've built. One thing that y'all have learned, and let me know if this is true or not. Have some of you, while you were working, did you have a financial advisor? And how many of your financial advisors told you that when retirement, your tax rate is going to be lower? They never told you that? Well, one of the things that most financial advisors tell you is that when you retire, your tax rate is going to be lower. Now, there is a chance that some of you are making less income in retirement, so you are paying less. But if you actually look at your tax rate, it's the same, if not higher, than it was when you were working. If you actually pay attention to it. So we're going to talk about how the government is one of the worst business partners you can have. If you were to take on a business partner, and that partner said, hey, you're going to do all the work. You're going to, lift all the machines. You're going to do all the cleaning. You're going to build all the relationships. And then when you're ready to get out of the business, I want half. No, matter of fact, I want 33%. And no, matter of fact, I want the right to change my mind with how much you owe me after you finish doing this job. That's what the government is. So I'm going to show you ways that, some families and some other individuals are able to, not pay as many taxes. Now, here's the thing. There are some people who truly believe, and I'm not disagreeing with you, that paying taxes is your patriotic duty. But the next question that I'm going to ask is, do you believe that the government is spending your money wisely? Even if you believe that paying taxes is your patriotic duty, most people will say, I don't think the government is spending my money wisely. If there was a way that you could legally avoid paying taxes, but use that money that you saved to spend on your own charities, spend on your own friends, spend on your own colleagues, where you can actually see what this surplus money is doing. Would you not prefer that instead? So once again, I don't care what you do with the money that you save in taxes, but there's a way that you can legally avoid it and then use that money to do whatever you want to do. And if it is do charity with it. Okay? So anybody in here get Social Security? Did y'all know, according to the Internal Revenue Code, that your Social Security is not supposed to be taxed? You knew that. Did you figure out how to avoid it? Basically, what it is the reason why your Social Security is being taxed is because your other money isn't allocated correctly. If you're able to get a majority of your income off the front face of your tax return, that's how you make sure your Social Security is not taxed. Because they're taxing you up to 15%. But there's a way to get around it, and we'll talk about that as well. And then financial strategies with growth and protection. So anybody, what percentage of Americans do you believe have a will? 12%? 80%? Can I get $1? What was that? That's close. The percentage of Americans that have a will is 40%. So 40 out of every 100 people have a will.
Should we clarify current will?
Okay. I appreciate that. Yeah, we can knock that down. 40% have a will, but I would say maybe 30% is obsolete. Because once a child is born or a child passes away, once you buy or sell something, that will is obsolete. And guess what? The way most attorneys have it set up is, okay, because I don't know, I think you told me your will's like 1970, right? 1990. Okay, man, I'm sorry, I added extra 20 years.
That's old.
All right. Oh, all right. So, matter of fact, how old are you, Dr. Percell?
Yeah, that's about right.
So you got your will when he was born. So your will could be a doctor right now, is what I'm saying.
Because if you're out of state, like you move from one state to another. From Illinois, I've not updated.
Now, I'm glad you mentioned that. So that's called jurisdictional shopping. So what that means is even though you move from one state to the other, that does not make your will obsolete. Because basically, as long as you have in that will what state governs your legal documents, it's still good. And the state of Florida or whichever state is still going to honor it. So that's still good, because we're actually going to talk about, anybody ever heard of citus a trust? Yeah, it's one of those crazy words. So it's S-I-T-U-S. We're going to talk about jurisdictional shopping. It's going to be one of the first points I make. So I'm glad you brought that up. Okay. What percentage of Americans do y'all believe have a trust? 20%. Man, you must have watched my presentation before. Now, you getting real close. The percentage of Americans that have a trust is 17%, right? So 17 out of every 100 people actually have a trust, right?
Is it either or? You either have a trust or a will. You don't have both.
No, I recommend you have both.
Oh, you do?
See, so whenever I'm sharing with people about the difference between a will and a trust, the main thing I say is if you only have a will, you guaranteed probate. But I do recommend having a will and a trust both combined. Now, when you're working with the right company, not only are they going to help you set your trust up, they're going to help you set your will up too. But they're also going to help you set up what's called a pour over will. So a pour over will is for, let's say, because a good company, my company, what we do is we meet with our customers once a year, right? And what's included in that meeting once a year is automatically, at no additional cost, we update your trust, we update your will, we update your power of attorneys if it has to be done. Go to any other group of people and ask them, when we set this up, can I come back every year and get it updated for free? They're going to say absolutely no, right? Because that, based off their business model, that's how they make money. Now, I like to be completely transparent with people. If you never do business with me, cool. However, the reason why our company go ahead and takes a flat rate and then we update it every year at no cost for free, because we hope, we don't demand it, we don't require it, but we hope that one day you talk to us about managing money, right? And if we help you set up your foundation, maybe when we talk every year, it might bring on a conversation. But once again, it's not required. I have customers, they don't talk to me about money at all. They just want their foundation good. And that's okay with me, okay? So, all right, so here are some findings. Nearly half of all respondents believe that estate planning is only for the ultra rich and most people don't need it. Does anybody believe that? Because everybody needs it. Because guess what? You all have an estate plan.
Yeah, if you don't have a lot of income or money or whatever.
So here's the thing. Like I told you, that main threshold is approximately $40,000. Now, I didn't look. I didn't really see any of you what you drove in, but some of you drove here in 40,000. You've already met the threshold to go to the next level of from that $1,500 cap to where it starts getting into 3% of your estate. What does that mean? Let's say if your house is valued right now at $500,000. That means in order for your family to get that property transferred into their name, it's going to be at least 15 grand, depending on what your other estate costs are, right? So that's something to consider. Why deal with that when you can take care of it today, right? Now, and some of you, I have some younger people that come in that's really getting this education for their parent. And one thing that I say is, trust me, if you pay for it, they'll do it. And what you can do is when you have a trust set up correctly, let's say some of your parents are still alive, and you know that this is going to be an issue. Did you know that you can pay for their estate plan and then put a promissory note inside of their trust to where you're the first person that gets reimbursed whenever that happens? So you can pay for it, put a promissory note inside of their trust, and then you're the first person that gets reimbursed. And then, you can avoid all of the headache of dealing with the siblings. The one that never shows up, but all of a sudden their hand is out, right? 25% haven't spoken about it with their families because they don't think about their own death. Do you know what I say about that? Everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die. And they think that if they talk about it, they're going to die. Well, I got some bad news. You're going to die. Only difference is you're setting up, to be traumatic. Some people have a very close-knit family, but if you're honest with yourself, they're only close-knit because of that patriarch or that matriarch. Once that matriarch or that patriarch of the family dies, the whole family is going to go into shambles, especially if there's no clear line of what you want to happen, okay? 49% say their assets aren't worth enough to consider an estate plan. We already defeated that myth. If you got a car that's worth $40,000, if you got a house that's worth a couple $100,000 or more, you're there, whether you know it or not. All right. 61% say a will is enough to meet their estate-related needs. We've already shared that if all you have is a will, you just guaranteed probate, and you didn't even guarantee that the judge will follow your will. And when you got that person that just ran over the cat in the cul-de-sac, contesting your will for no reason, only to make your life worse. You need more. 35% have experienced or know someone who has experienced family conflict as a result of not having an estate plan or comprehensive will. Let me tell you what happens, and tell me if y'all can relate to this. When something like that happens to a family, a majority of the fighting has nothing to do with the money. It has to do with the stuff.
With the what?
The stuff. The stuff. Like, for example, and let me just use this as an example. Let's say there was a coffee mug that your mother used to drink every morning. And nobody thought nothing about that coffee mug while she was here. But once she passes away, all of a sudden, that's a treasure. That's my coffee. Mama said I could get that coffee mug, right? What if we help encourage that conversation sooner than later? All right, y'all, this is still my stuff. But is there anything, because once again, you don't think about it. Is there anything of my stuff that either one of y'all want? We're not even talking about the money. Is there anything of my stuff? We encourage that conversation and you're able to get it written down.
What if they say no? And then that's what's going to happen. They're going to
But that's where that transparency comes into place. Because if you're having this conversation open and transparent, because I don't recommend that you segregate everybody off and have have this conversation transparently and openly. Everybody will see that person that says, I don't want nothing, right? And then you're able to get it written down, because one of the conversations we're going to have is, all right, what do they want? Let's get this written down. All right. And then even though it seems insignificant, we're going to make sure it gets written down and it's a conversation that you had. Because here's the thing. Nobody wants to go up to their kids and say, hey, y'all know I'm going to die eventually, right? They're going to do everything they can to change the subject. It's a different conversation when you come up and say, hey, everything's already set up. I just want to know what stuff y'all want. It's a whole different conversation. Oh, mom, dad, you're not going to die. Okay. I'm the person in the Bible that's still walking the earth. All right, I'm going to be that person. But just in case I do die, I'm already set up. What stuff do y'all want? Okay.
Let's talk about the conversations next week.
Next week. Oh, exactly. And not. A matter of fact, and I don't know if y'all know this, most life insurance is sold in December. Did y'all know that? Most life insurance is sold in December. And that's because, you get reminded of your family. What were you about to say? You about to say?
I forget that. No, like, and that is what you stipulate in the will, like I want, your mom's gonna say, I want Jan to have this, she wants that, so that's in the will part. That's
And then the trust is going to,
different. Okay.
and then the trust is going to parlay to the will. But because you're using the trust as a mechanism instead of the court system, that's when you're able to keep everything private.
So during the trust, are you appointing someone like a executor, I guess what you call it?
Yeah, so when you're dealing with a trust, because what you're saying is an executor of an estate, when you're dealing with a trust, they call it a trustee. So yes, now, since you brought it up, anybody think it's a good idea to elect co-trustees? No? Heck no?
I have two. I have two.
You have to? So let me tell you what happens. That's when you reach, you ever see when they shut down the government? They're going to shut down the government, right? Because you got two opposing parties that now have no type of rings. You were the one that kept them in order. And it seems like they should be able to work in harmony and make these decisions together. But here's the thing. You're going to have to elect a trustee and then a contingent. You got to have somebody that's at the top of them, and you got to have these conversations, right? And depending on how big your estate is, you might decide, all right, I'm just going to go to corporate trustee right. So please, if you never heard of a corporate trustee, write it down or remember it. So here's what a corporate trustee does. It's more than one corporate trustee company in the United States. All they do is manage people's trust. Because guess what? There's no trust police. Has anybody ever been named a trustee or an executor? Yeah? The first year, it's like an honor, right? You're like, oh man, this person, they trusted me. Oh, so it was one of the things where you got forced into being the executor. All right? So, 2 times. But so tell me, I'm curious. Okay.
Though he left the house in my name and his name, so that wasn't a problem. My name was on his checking account, that wasn't a problem. But there was just mostly it wasn't too bad. My first husband just didn't have a will. He wound up riding a bicycle, got hit by a car, and got killed. So
Wow.
In Illinois, they call it administrative. Of that, but same thing. Though he didn't have a lot, so probate went pretty well. Then my second husband, which was interesting, same thing. I thought he didn't have a will. And that was fun because his children won. There were 4 of them, 3 on board, 1 wasn't, and so we had issues. And you're right, it adds to the bill.
Yeah, because in the situation you're naming is somebody that's forced into that position, right? But you have people that get forced into it, which it starts off as a stressful thing, and then you have people that get elected. Either way, the same conclusion ends up happening, because the people who get elected, that got elected before the person died, it does come across as, hey, I'm the responsible one, right? But around year 2 or 3, that's when it starts feeling stressful, depending on how big the estate is, right? So here's the thing. Some people say, not only do I not want to put stress on anybody to wrap up my business, I also don't want to isolate this person from the rest of the family. Because guess what happens to that executive, that trustee? All you're doing is following what's reasonable, what's responsible, and a lot of times what's already in the will, and now you're the bad person. I'm following this step by step. I'm crossing every T, dotting every I, the way that mom, the way that dad, the way that grandma, the way that granddad, the way uncle, exactly the way they want it. And all of a sudden, y'all don't invite me to parties no more. All of a sudden, y'all don't tell me about good things that's happening in y'all life anymore. So somebody might say, all right, I don't want to put that stress on my family, so I'll go ahead and elect a corporate trustee. So just so you know, a corporate trustee is an option. They're going to take a nominal fee, just like whoever your executor or whoever your trustee is entitled to, right? But the thing is, they're not going to liquidate your trust. They're going to follow everything to the T, and you take a lot of that pressure off the rest of your family. So just so you know, corporate trustees exist. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I'm trying to understand.
Mm-hmm.
Is the trustee the same as a person that has power of attorney / executiveship or something like that?
Not always. So, go ahead.
I'm trying to understand the difference between a trust and a will.
Okay.
You know, that whole thing.
Well, a trust is the mechanism that lets you avoid probate. It's basically, it's another entity, because what happens is while you're alive, now some people have what they call irrevocable trust while they're alive. But what typically happens if you're setting up a trust to avoid probate, it's a revocable living trust. And then once you die, it triggers and turns into an irrevocable trust. And whoever your trustee is has to get an EIN number for your trust.
Trustee still meaning power of attorney, a person that has power of attorney?
Not necessarily, because the reason why I want to make sure there's a clear distinction is because sometimes there's power of attorney with finances, there's power of attorney with medical, right? So you can have a trustee that isn't necessarily your power of attorney with your medical decisions. And you can have a trustee that isn't necessarily your power of attorney with financial decisions. They're just the one that comes into place once you pass away. All right. So a lot of, once you die, yeah, that trustee has a lot of power. But while you're alive, you're also going to have some power of attorneys in place. And we're actually going to discuss that, because just like a trust, anybody have any medical or financial power of attorneys currently? No? Medical or financial power of attorney? Yeah, like a living, it can be a living will. Do y'all have co-decision makers on that too? They're going to shut down the government. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I have 3. They all live out of state.
Are they?
One lives in state here, Florida, so she has my bank account here.
Mm-hmm.
The other lives in another state. She's on my bank account there.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like the solution that you've been using so far is what they call joint tenancy. Basically saying, as long as I put one of my children's name on the title of my home, as long as I put one of my children's name on my bank account, my savings and my checking account, then it avoids probate, right?
I haven't done it on my
Huh?
I guess that's a question. I haven't put them on my house.
Look up Ladybird deed. You heard of that?
Yeah, when my husband passed away, I did not get a chance to take advantage of that.
Mm-hmm. And you wish you did.
Huh?
You wish you did?
You wish I did?
No, I'm asking. You said you didn't get a chance to
No,
do.
I didn't. I did not get to take advantage of that.
But do you?
But at the time, I think the time passed or it
Mhm.
expired or
Would
something
you
like
have
that.
chosen to do it if you could?
Did I have what?
If you, if
Would you,
had
in
a
retro?
chance to use it, would you have done the Ladybird deed, is what he's asking.
I don't know.
Gotcha. So, because since you were married, it's a different situation, right? But however, if you've never heard of Ladybird deed, what it is not every state allows you to do it, but the state of Florida allows you to put, it's what they call, some of you probably heard of what's called a life estate. Now, a life estate, there's a disadvantage to it, because once you set up your life estate, whoever the beneficiary is, if you decide to sell your house or refinance your house, you got to get that beneficiary's permission. Who wants that? But a ladybird deed, it allows you to still set that up, file it with the clerk downtown, and whenever somebody files your death certificate, whatever you put in your ladybird deed will automatically take place. Some people have it to where the ladybird deed transfers the property to another individual. Some people have it, which a lot of my clients do, they have it to where the ladybird deed automatically transfer the property to their trust. And the reason why you don't want to do, most people choose not to do that before they die is because you still want your kids to get what they call step-up basis. Anybody ever heard of step-up basis? All right, so let's say you bought a house 30 years ago, right? And when you bought this house 30 years ago, the house was valued at $50,000. And then when you die, now it's at $300,000. What step-up basis means is whenever that property transfers to your child, it transfers from that 50 basis to that 300,000 basis. But if you transfer the property while you are alive, step-up basis is gone. So that means if they ever sell your property, instead of only having to pay taxes on the difference between $300,000 for what they sell it for, now they have to pay taxes on the difference of that $50,000. A ladybird deed allows you to avoid that. And if any of you currently have any Medicaid, utilizing a ladybird deed instead of transferring also keeps you from having to deal with a lot of headache with your Medicaid and all of that. All right? Yes, ma'am.
Randolph, I'm gonna have to leave.
Okay.
Excuse.
Okay.
And so, I'll have to contact you because I would like to know more.
Yes, ma'am.
You know, what you're talking about here today. Because my husband did not leave a will, although many times I tried to talk with him about it.
Tried to convince him.
And it was something he didn't want to really talk about, dying and all that. But, you know, I need some direction,
I got you.
you know, so, I will get.
No, I got you. I keep a box of Kleenex in my office for a reason. Because I keep a box of Kleenex in my office for a reason. Usually it's the woman of the family that's leading the charge with getting this taken care of. And usually when they find out that I exist, the waterworks come. And I'm like, here you go. You know what I mean? I got you. All right. So yeah, ladybird deed. Let me get this going again. All right. Estate planning.
I just have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, we're just, I guess, ignorant. I mean, it's just Mike and I and then our son.
Mhm.
So here, this is easy for us. We got a last will and testament. Mike's got one, I got one.
Mhm.
So Nan's him, and I'm like,
Mhm.
and you know, vice versa. And then our son, if we both die simultaneously.
Mhm.
Easy. So we don't have to worry about somebody contesting it. Troy doesn't have any other siblings, so it's like, this is easy for us.
But here's the thing.
His sisters contest our will.
Absolutely. A complete stranger.
Because they see that in the paper.
Mm-hmm. All it takes is either for a complete stranger or one of your siblings or another family member, cousin. All they got to do is say, nope.
This is how the government screws you even in death.
Exactly. Okay, we get into it. Like we definitely get into it and even because your situation seems very simple. But one thing that we're going to talk about is joint tenancy, right? Because guess what? A lot of people, their strategy is, like I said, put my child's name on the deed, no probate. Put my child's name on a checking account, no probate. On my savings account, no probate. Yes, you just successfully avoided probate. Congratulations. But do you know what you just invited? What if your son gets sued? What if he goes through divorce? What if he goes through bankruptcy?
That's his essence.
Because what a good attorney is going to do is do what they call a skip trace. As soon as they see that your son or your daughter or anybody else's name is on your house and on your accounts, that just got rolled up into the lawsuit, that just got rolled up into the divorce, that just got rolled up into the bankruptcy. So it's one of those things to be careful what you wish for. Yes, you just avoided probate, but you just invited some unnecessary risk, okay?
But even though their name is, like Troy's name isn't on our checking account on our house, he's a beneficiary.
Mm-hmm.
And it's still just because he's listed as, even though it's not.
See, now that's a different thing. Now, if he's just a beneficiary, it still can be open to his debtors, his creditors. Because one of the benefits that we're going to discuss is that when you have a trust, your beneficiary can stop the money. And right now you'll be like, well, why would somebody want to stop the money? I'm going to explain it to you why they would want to stop it. All right. So let's get into some of these scenarios. All right. So scenario number one, and just so y'all know, these scenarios aren't, I'm not just pulling this out the blue, right? This happens every day. Did you know that and I know the doc knows, every 8 seconds, there's another accident. Every 8 seconds, there's another accident. As we're talking, another one, right? So a lot of these scenarios, they get introduced due to an accident. But just know, I'm not just pulling this out the air. This stuff happens all the time, all right? So scenario number one, a couple is in a car accident, right? So let's say that you and your husband are in a car accident, and now you're in the hospital incapacitated. You can't speak. Did you know that your adult children have no rights to get any information on you or make any decisions on your behalf? Because a lot of you probably have, if you do have a medical and financial power of attorney, you probably have it set up going to, either one way or the other. You should do both, right? Maybe your children have a medical and financial power of attorney on you, but you should have one on them as well. Maybe as a grandparent, you always watch your grandchildren. What happens if your child is unreachable and your grandchild breaks their leg? All you can do as the grandparent is just drop them off. You can't make no decisions. You can't get no information. But if you get a medical power of attorney in place, you can. All right. So in this situation, you have adult children that come to the hospital, but they can't get information. So just so you know, if you do not have a medical power of attorney in place, please get it in place. And don't have have a primary and at least 2 contingents. That's my recommendation. Have at least one, but I recommend a primary power of attorney and then 2 contingents. That way, and then be honest, have the conversation. And that way we know, all right, we're going to work together to make sure that our parents are taken care of, but everybody knows I'm the final decision maker.
What do you mean when you say contingency?
All right, so if that primary is either unable to get in contact with, either they passed away or you just cannot get in touch with them. Yes, absolutely. So primary and then somebody in place just in case that person, the primary is unreachable, and then another person, that's the third contingent. Another word for that is tertiary, a third person in place. But I recommend having a linear, not because once again, you'll get the government shut down on you.
So
Yes, sir.
So I think more recently, I was telling you earlier, right? So me and my sister, when our dad passed away, so we were coupled, right, at the time. And although for the most part we agreed on certain things, there were some things we disagreed on, And so everything that he said is true to the point to where you never want that to be an issue when it comes to making certain decisions, right? Although you would hope, especially when you're on Earth, that your children, 2 or 3 that you may have, can all come together. But a lot of times they don't all.
Oh yeah, it don't work like that.
Money is a big divider of the family.
Yeah.
But what I will say is what helped with us is, and I decided to do this on my own, so I sort of stepped back and sort of made her, like voluntarily made her primary, where she essentially made the decisions, but what she would do, she would come to me and say, hey, this is what I'm thinking, what's your opinion? ultimately, essentially kind of gave her like the final say,
Right.
this is what's going to happen, because
So make her feel like she's in control.
Hey, she probably was in control. Because here's the thing. One thing about it, most men, if you really understand women, you know to back up. I'm not going to win this argument. But how many, especially, more and more men are getting more and more emotional nowadays, right? So especially, it's like, huh? What do you mean? You've seen it. You see the TV shows are different than what they were back then, right? All right. So here's the thing: how many siblings are going to have that presence of mind and say, you know what? Let me preserve the relationship and let me step back. Nah, they fight, and they're not going to talk to each other for at least 5 Christmases. If they ever talk to each other again, right? We want to avoid that stuff. All right. So in this scenario, it seems like that might be a concern for some of y'all. All right. What about scenario number 2? All right. So we're going to get into the beneficiary conversation. Let's say that this couple has some qualified retirement accounts, 403Bs, 401Ks, IRAs, right? And they list their son, their favorite son, because whether y'all want to admit it or not, y'all got a favorite. Y'all won't say it out loud, but y'all got a favorite. Like, no, of course not. Nah, y'all got a favorite. So what if their favorite child was in the car with them when they passed away? So boom, father dies, mother dies, son dies. What happens is, if you only have it set up to where you just have the beneficiary of your qualified retirement account, or the beneficiary of your bank account, or the beneficiary, if they die simultaneously with you, you just watched all of that. Now it's going to go to the closest surviving relative. Maybe that child that don't even talk to you anymore, or maybe that spouse to where y'all are estranged. You never got a divorce. Y'all just stay out of each other's orbit, but they're still your closest surviving relative, right? So if you have this set up, not only did you wipe out the plans that you thought you had, meaning that you thought, all right, all I have to do is name him as a beneficiary and it avoids probate. Not only did this one accident just wipe out the plans that you thought you had, it potentially went to a person that you didn't want it to go to, and you just unintentionally removed your grandchildren from your estate plan. Because guess what? If the son was the beneficiary and he died, the children have no more direct connection. Now the grandchildren don't get anything, all right? And that might be a concern for some of y'all. I don't know. What about this scenario? We already talked about this, joint tenancy. When you put your child or anybody else's name on the deed in order to avoid probate, or you put their names on your bank accounts, or as a joint owner of the account, once again, yes, you just successfully avoided probate, but what you also did was invite, if they ever get sued, if they ever go through bankruptcy, if they ever go through divorce, now your assets are on the table. And all it takes is a good attorney. Y'all might call him a bad attorney, but a good attorney is going to run a skip trace. And they're going to see everything that you own, right? All right. So and we just talked about it. You put it on the divorce, the lawsuit, the bankruptcy. All right. So what about this? This parent has a large IRA. So some of you might not have an IRA. Some of you might have a 401k. Some of you might have a 403B, right? Either way, imagine if you have somebody named as the beneficiary, all right? So boom, you pass away, and the child receives a lump sum of $200,000. Now that's how much was in your account. Guess what's going to happen? Here come taxes. Because they were the direct beneficiary and it didn't go through the trust, they're paying the taxes, right? So out of that $200,000, take away $64,000 in taxes, right? Now the child is left with $136,000. So you like, all right, listen, it's not the full 200, but it's okay. Do you know what happens a majority of the time when somebody gets a lump sum of money? What happens in 18 months? it's completely gone. It's not reinvested. It's gone. So what we call it, y'all ever heard of the dead hand? The dead hand. The dead hand is when you still controlling things from the grave, right? You can set up to where you have what's called built into your trust called an IRA beneficiary trust, all right? So what's one of the benefits of an IRA beneficiary trust? You can stop the money. Here's the example. If you're working with anybody, make sure whoever the stakeholders are in your family has that card. So you're going to make sure, if you work with me, you're going to make sure everybody that's a stakeholder in your family has a card to contact me and my team, right? And here's what's going to happen. They're going to call me and say, hey, I got bad news. My mom died or my dad died. And then, of course, I'm going to do the normal, I'm sorry to hear that, right? And then we're going to have a conversation and I'm going to say, well, good news is your mom, your dad, they set up everything. They set up the trust. They set up the will. You don't even have to worry about this. But let me ask you a quick question. How's your marriage doing? Right? And they're going to do what everybody else does when you first ask them about their marriage. Oh, it's great, right? And then that's when my voice is going to I'm going to go shut the door and my voice is going to get lower. I'll say, no, really, how's your marriage going? And then that's when they say, well, it's a little rocky, a little stuff. So I say, hey, I'm not advocating you get a divorce. However, if you are thinking about that, let's keep this money in the trust. Let's let your divorce, whatever you're about to do, go through, and then you can access this money. Or
The spouse doesn't have access?
No, because it's in the trust, and the child never took possession of it.
It's not their asset yet.
It's not their asset yet because they never pulled it out, right? And you also have what they call a spendthrift clause in there. If you never heard of spendthrift, basically what it is I don't care if my son or daughter owes the president. Because it went through my trust and I have a spendthrift clause on it, you can't touch it. So creditors can't touch it. The spouse can't touch it. What if your child is going through a bankruptcy or a lawsuit when you pass away? They can't touch it because, once again, they've never took possession of it. So that's why I say, yes, it's cool. You avoid probate by naming a person as the beneficiary, but they can't stop the money. They can't stop the money. They can't protect it from creditors, and they can't protect it from taxes. Okay? So if you look at this, and this just basically breaks down in the words how it worked out. All right. Now, in this scenario, this person was left with $136,000, right? But what if that spouse saw that as the prime moment? Okay, now that they got this money, I was thinking about filing a divorce. Now I'm definitely going to file. So once again, nobody likes to think about accidents. Nobody likes to think about divorce, but it's my job to make you think about this stuff. Okay. So now that 200, which turned into 136, now just turned into 68,000. And look at the child. She like, I knew something was wrong. Where's my money? It's my money and I need it now, right? And we've already talked about IRA beneficiary trust. So one thing you want to make sure that's built into your trust is the IRA beneficiary trust, which once again lets your beneficiaries stop the money if they need to. Okay. All right. So you manage the distribution, the dead hand, right? You protect children against lawsuits and you protect children against divorce. All right. So let's talk about conservatorship. Anybody familiar with this term? All right. So here's the thing. I got good genes, right? I got my granddaddy, he's over 90 years old. He still got his sense. He still drives. And I don't mean that drive to where he shows up and there's a dent in his car every other week. The tree just jumped out at me. Nah, he drives. He still operates his own business. My granny, a lot of people, which is his wife, they like to, they try to make my granny seem like simple. Nah, she's one of the smartest women I ever met. right? She haven't worked in what, 30 years? And she's still living good because she aligned herself with the right man, and she takes care of her children. So she's very smart in that regard, right? They both still have their senses. But when somebody loses capacity, it can be like that. Even though I know my granddaddy and my granny, they still operating at a high level based on their age. I know it's a possibility that one day I get a call that my granddaddy went to Walmart and he couldn't remember how to get home. The same trip he took every day for decades, I know it can happen like that. A lot of people think that just because you're married, that you don't have to put medical and financial power of attorneys on each other. You couldn't be further from the truth. If you're married, but you don't have a medical and financial power of attorney on each other, what happens is when your spouse, if your spouse loses capacity like that, now you got to go to court to get a conservatorship. You have to pay somebody to give you the right to make decisions for your spouse. And then depending on what your capacity is, some of you probably heard of an attorney that's called the guardian ad litem. Typically, a guardian ad litem represents the legal interests of a child. But if somebody loses their capacity, the guardian ad litem actually represents them as well. So now, not only did you have to go to court to get permission to make decisions on your spouse, every critical decision that you make from here on out, you could have to reach out to this guardian ad litem, pay them their fee, which is $500 plus each decision, just to have that. Or you can today get your financial and medical financial or power of attorney in place. If you get that in place before your spouse loses their capacity, then you don't have to deal with all this conservatorship stuff. But if you don't, that could be, something that you might have to deal with. Okay? Did anybody know that even though you're married, that you should get a medical and financial power of attorney on each other? Because here's the thing. Here's what some people tell me. Here's what some people say. They say, well, my husband has me listed as a beneficiary, right? So what happens if your husband or your wife loses capacity and all of a sudden their Medicare or whatever their health insurance ran out? Now they got to be transferred to another facility, right? You got the money. You've been saving for all these years. You got your money in your accounts. When your spouse reaches out to your financial advisor or whoever is holding your money, they're going to say, hey, so my husband has to get transferred to this facility. I have to access this money. Guess what your financial advisor is going to say? They're going to say, okay, well, just send me the death certificate, and what I'll do is I'll get everything taken care of. I said, no, you didn't hear me correctly. My husband didn't die yet. My wife didn't die yet. They just incapacitated. That's when they're going to say, well, I'm sorry. Because you're only listed as the beneficiary, your rights only come into play if your spouse dies. As long as they're still alive, you have no rights. You can't access this money legally. As long as your spouse is still alive, you don't have a medical power of attorney. Now, a lot of hospitals, what they do once they see that you're married, they start giving you information. But that's actually illegal for them to do. They have to check, even if you're married, they have to check to see if you have that medical power of attorney in order to ask these questions and to get this information. So, that's something to be aware of. Is there nobody here that have any special needs beneficiaries? No?
What do you mean by?
Not yet. It's somebody who has delayed development. Now an old word that they say this is a bad word, but when I was growing up, it was, you said retarded. Right? So I had to give you, but now, now it's a bad, and the actual word means slow for something to happen, right? So now, it's delayed development, special needs, definitely whatever it takes not to offend anybody, right? But that being said, a lot of special needs people have programs that they've been in for years, decades. What happens when this special needs child gets a lump sum of money sent to them? they get kicked out of all their programs.
You got too much money, don't you?
You got too much money now. Did that trigger something?
My grandson.
So now I left you this money unintentionally. I just kicked you out of your programs. Now we gotta scramble to find somewhere to put this money. And since, once these people see you scrambling, they're gonna charge you a premium, right? So now you're being charged a premium to put this money, and then you got to go through the whole process of requalifying. Because a lot of people, when a child is first born, you don't really, that qualification stuff, you forget all about it because it's all happening at the same time. But imagine trying to requalify somebody that's older as an adult. You don't realize how long it takes to get people to qualify, how many hoops you got to jump through. Or you can have a special needs trust, a universal guardian trust, to where the money goes there for the needs of that child. But because they never actually take full possession of it, it doesn't kick them out of their programs.
It'd be like if your child had Down syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's at
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
the rest of their life, they're gonna.
Oh, yeah, they're going to need that help. But this way, when you have the money go to the guardianship trust or the special needs trust instead of directly to them, once again, they got plenty of money that they got access to, but because it never came directly to them, they still are in their programs. So for your grandchild, for anybody, this might be something that you want to, be aware of. And just so you know, this lady right here is one of my team members. She goes down on a regular basis and speaks on behalf of special needs people and delayed development people. So that's somebody that I work with, and we help make sure that the trust is specially designed based off any new rules or laws that come into place. Okay? All right, and we already talked about this one right here. If your spouse is in a coma or becomes incapacitated, your spouse has an IRA, what access will you have to the money without proper documents? If you are married and you do not have a current, and keep in mind, even if you have a financial medical power of attorney, those rules change more frequently than you know. One of the benefits of aligning yourself with a company that allows you to update these documents every year at no additional cost is when the laws change, then your documents will change, right?
So that's the same for a kid?
Yes. When you say same for the kid, what do you mean?
Well, since I'm widowed, I don't have a spouse.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
My child.
Yeah, you want to make sure. I recommend that you have medical and financial power of attorney on all your children and vice versa. Because you say what? Who knows? Because here's the thing. Once again, I've never been married, but a lot of y'all know that they would rather have you making their medical and financial decisions if they're incapacitated than their spouse. Let's be real, right? So a lot of people, until you let them know that that's an option, they don't know.
They don't have to have a husband's permission.
No, they do not. They do not. Hey, you saying some real stuff. Keep in mind, see, I'm that guy. I'm the one that asks the tough questions. Like, even when my customers call me and say they're engaged, I say, congratulations. So are you getting a prenup? Okay, I'm that guy. But once again, you need somebody that asks those questions that you would never think about, right? And what rights do you get information to make decisions of your adult children without proper documents? And once again, I recommend that, it's not just a one-way thing, it's vice versa. They don't, and keep in mind, we build into these power of attorneys. They can't just come in and start running the show. There's certain thresholds that have to be met before somebody can start making decisions on your behalf. Okay? All right. So most common questions. Now, we already asked this. What's better, a trust or a will? Trust. All right. Probate court. What is probate court? Now, here's the thing. The way I was raised, yes, it can be avoided. So here's the thing. The way that I was raised, I thought probate court was just what happened. Anybody else thought that everybody go through probate?
Yeah, it's,
Because nobody had stuff in order. So everybody that I knew, when they died, the family got into it, and then they went to probate, and then people stopped talking to each other. I just thought that was just normal, right? But really and truly, it's just the way it's set up. So here's what probate court is. It's the granting of probate is the first step in the legal process of administering a deceased person's estate. It resolves all claims while distributing all the deceased person's property under the will, right? Because what happens is if you don't have a will in place when you die, it's called dying intestate. And what the court judge does, in that court proceeding, they actually create a posthumous will for you, right? But if you have a will in advance, you still got to go through probate. That not a judge can follow your roadmap. So,
Is it true that if someone took out a sheet of paper and they started writing down stuff and they put it
As long as
underneath
it's
the
notarized or something, or witnessed,
it has to
does
be
that work like on TV?
right. Like if they wrote, "This is my last will,"
Yeah.
boom, boom, boom. They signed their signature, folded it up, and they just kind of stuck it
someone
somewhere.
notarizes it.
so all right. So, and I'm glad you brought that up. All right. So,
Yeah, it's not notarized.
So here's the thing: it's what you're asking me is this considered a legal doctrine to where it would qualify as somebody's will? And to your point, you asked, well, did they get it notarized, right? So once again, it's still whether or not, because yes, if somebody can prove that this was their wish, and they can prove that it was them that signed it, and they were under no duress, and they had a sane mind, yes, it will qualify as a will. But guess what? Still got to go through probate. Do you see what I'm saying?
See, I always thought if you had a will, you didn't necessarily have to.
That's the way we were raised. And now that I told you this, a quick Google search, you will see multiple sources that confirm what I said, that a will guarantees probate. It does not avoid probate. If all you have is a will, it guarantees probate, right? So here's why probate exists, right? Because it exists for a reason, but people, just like everything else, we abuse it. So just imagine if there was a person who wanted to get their yard landscaped, right? And they bring over a landscaper, and the landscaper, they look at the yard and they quote them a price. They say, hey, it's going to cost you $5,000 for me to landscape your property. So the woman, let's say whoever owns the house, pays the landscaper $2,500 up front. The landscaper does a beautiful job. And then he talks to the homeowner, and the homeowner says, this is great. I got to make a quick trip up north to visit my daughter, but I'll be back in a few days, and then I'll send you your money. Well, a week goes by. 2 weeks goes by. 3 weeks goes by, and this landscaper doesn't hear from the homeowner, so he goes and knocks on the door, and then all of a sudden, the unknown man opens the door and he said, hey, I'm looking for Miss Wilson. He said, I'm sorry, Miss Wilson, that was my mother, and she passed away on her trip up north. Do you think this son is going to give this landscaper $2,500? Absolutely not. So in that scenario, that's when the landscaper would go through probate to get their money. So it's a need for it, but not the way that most people are using it. Okay?
And it's also based off of their assets. I guess their assets, how much worth they how much money they actually had, right? Because say if $2,500 was just one case, but say they got $300,000 in debt somewhere else, and they only had $100,000 in the assets, right? It's like, well, how they gonna divvy up all that, right? It's kind of like
It's also the medical bills.
Yeah. But check this out. That's where all of these caps come into place. So this is for the state of Florida. If anybody didn't know, these are your caps, right? You got $1,500 for $40,000 or less, $2,250 for $40,001 to $70,000, then $3,000 from $70,001 to $100,000, and then $100,001 on up to $1 million. You're looking at $3,000 plus 3%. Now keep in mind, what did I tell you? These are the caps if there's no issues. See, this is what's, see, here's the thing.
Mine was like $2,000 just to take without everything else.
But think about, so was there any type of controversy at all?
Just the one.
Just one controversy?
Just one.
That's what gave him permission to charge you more than the state caps. Do you see what I'm saying? These attorneys are smart.
Who writes the laws? The goofy attorney?
Yeah, the attorneys, they the ones that write the rules. And they know.
It was ended even before all this. I contacted several, and it was $2,000 up front to do in Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they charge.
Oh yeah, so and once again, every state has their own caps, but that's them trying to get they fee.
And it didn't matter, every phone call, which I didn't realize, every time you call and get our they charge you.
Yeah,
I was like, what?
yeah.
They come across all friendly and sweet, and then all of a sudden, boom, boom, boom.
See, you wanna utilize an attorney before. Attorneys are always cheaper before than when you are in the situation. So I work hand in hand with attorneys. Sierra couldn't make it today. One of the attorneys that I work with, Sierra Lister, I work hand in hand with attorneys. And when you're working with them before the issue, easy peasy. But once you are in an issue, it is what it is, right? So these are the caps that are in place for the state of Florida if there's no controversy, if there's nobody contesting. But as y'all know, how often do you have this type of situation and nobody is contesting? No controversy at all. All it takes is that attorney to document that one controversy, that one contest. Boom. Now caps are exploded. All right. So here's where all of the stuff goes in probate. Pays for all of these bills, right? Would you rather the money go to your family? I think so. Delays. All right, so when you pass away, you still got bills. So in the state of Florida, it takes, on average, now there's some situations that take longer, some that might take a little less, but on average, it takes about 6 months for somebody to go through probate. So doing probate, right, you said, what, did it take you longer or what? Maybe longer, right? But 2 years. Because there's no limit. So guess what's happening while you're going through probate? On a lot of this, you still got property taxes. You still got electrical bills. You still got all of these stuff. And guess who's usually paying these bills? It's usually the most successful child. Usually the most successful child or the most responsible child is the one that's keeping up all of these responsibilities. Do you think they're going to get reimbursed? Nope. And that's another contention, another little bit of animosity that's going to make them never talk to each other again. Now, some people, you're okay. You might be okay with your children not having a relationship without you. But some people prefer that the family stays a cohesive unit, even if they're gone. And this is one of the ways to do it, okay? So you got house payment, you got monthly bills, you got real estate taxes. And public record. And like I said, if you do not have a properly structured trust, then your estate has to be in the newspaper for at least 3 weeks. And then that's when you got all of the crazies coming out to contest you. All right? So here's the way it usually works with people with the will. You put all of your house, your assets, your cars, your motor vehicle, your cash, your securities, your stock into the will. All right? So now you have to pay 10% of that for liquidation costs. So that's attorney's fees, executive fees, and accounting fees, all right? This is a scenario if all you have is a will. Then you have to pay approximately 30% in taxes. You got federal and state taxes, state taxes. Now, a good thing about Florida is we don't have state taxes, right? But then you have income taxes, approximately 30%. So that means if all you have is a will, your family is going to end up with approximately 60% of your assets. If you have a properly structured trust, you avoid these fees, you avoid these taxes, and your family can keep 100%. Now, I'm going to be completely transparent. Sometimes we can only get it down to about 90%, depending on what you got going on. But 90% is better than 60%. Okay? How will you be remembered? All right. So we're coming up to the end, y'all. So I just, since we went through all of this, well, let me ask you, did y'all learn something today? I know you go to these as a career. That's like a side job for you, but hopefully you learned something, something extra than the other ones, right? So are you 100% sure that your trust is properly and fully funded? So just so y'all know, whenever you hear the term funding or funded as it relates to trust, it doesn't necessarily mean money. It means making sure all of the critical assets and components are properly titled in the trust's name. Now, one reason that my company is able to do all these updates for you at no additional cost is jurisdictional shopping, what we were talking about. Even though you're in a different state, as long as it's clear which state laws that your will is following, that's not going to hurt it. That's not going to make it obsolete. All right. The reason why I'm bringing this up is, did y'all know that over 60% of the top companies in the United States are domiciled in Delaware? Even though the home office for Coca-Cola is in Atlanta, they're domiciled in Delaware. Boeing, jet company, even though their home office is in Seattle, they're domiciled in Delaware. What do y'all think is the reason that they're doing that? Taxes, and it gives them the rules that they prefer, right? Just like a business entity is able to go with the state that gives them the best, you as an individual can go with the state that gives you the best. One thing that I want you to look up is it not a good idea to situs, S-I-T-U-S, my trust in Nevada? Now, you're going to see multiple opinions, but one of the benefits of situsing your trust in Nevada and not the state of Florida is that all of your funding can be done in 30 minutes or less. Whereas if you're situsing your trust in Florida, all of your funding has to be done via paperwork. Now, I know some of you're from the generation where everything is paper, right? But when you're dealing with paper, that's what brings in that's when you can't get rid of these expensive attorneys. So here's what happens. You pay an attorney $8,000 to set up your trust, your will, and everything, right? And then a year later, something changes. You go back to that same attorney, and that attorney, you say, hey, it's not no big deal. This one thing changed. And that's when your attorney say, all right, well, let me take a look at it, right? And then a week later, that's when they're going to say, hey, listen, I was able to get this done for you. Because keep in mind, it took 2 weeks to even get on their calendar, right? Once you got on their calendar, a week later, they say, all right, we have to, it was more difficult than I originally thought. So we're going to go ahead and get all this paperwork put together for you, and it's going to be another $1,200. You have no authority in that. Now you have to make the decision of, am I going to keep this obsolete will and trust, or am I going to pay this extra money, right? Because it all has to be done via paperwork. So then when you get the paperwork from this attorney, keep in mind, you just paid them $1,200 just to get the additional paperwork. Now you got to send it to the right entities. It takes at least 30 days for those people to get that paperwork and do whatever they need to do.